Live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 125. This is Joy News Prime with me, Samuel Kojo Brace. Coming up, President Akufo-Addo hints at rigorous expenditure rationalization and prudent spending as government strategizes to meet conditions set by the IMF to access the second tranche of the bailout in 6 months. Also, IMF report reviews how 4 loans from China left Ghana on the brink of losing significant amount of revenue from some key mineral resources, including gold, cocoa, and even revenue from electricity sales. Also, in this bulletin, cultivation of marijuana remains an offense in Ghana as Supreme Court affirms its decision, which stated that Parliament acted unconstitutionally when it allowed production for medicinal purposes without due process. Now, President Akufo-Addo says government is undertaking rigorous expenditure rationalization and prudent spending to meet conditions set by the International Monetary Fund in order to access the second tranche of the bailout in 6 months. The IMF board last week approved Ghana's request for a $3 billion bailout, resulting in the release of the first $600 million to the Bank of Ghana. But subsequent releases will be hinged on Ghana meeting certain conditions set by the fund, which includes improvement in domestic revenue mobilization. In an interaction session at the ongoing Qatar Economic Forum, the president said government is very aware of its obligations and will live up to it.
The rationalization of our expenditures, the rationalization of government expenditures is something that we have given the assurance. The domestic revenue mobilization is absolutely critical for us. Already we're beginning to see signs of that. We are the fiscal deficit to come back within the thresholds that we have a law, a fiscal responsibility law in Ghana, which has pegged our fiscal deficits at 5% at the moment is way above that, and the sooner we can bring that again to a more acceptable threshold, the better it is for our economy. So these are all several areas of activity that we see as being absolutely essential for the future of our country.
How concerned are you that, Ghana next year has an election, you'll be leaving office. Are you concerned, considering inflation right now is north of 40%, there's already a lot that Ghanaians are enduring, that this could potentially hurt your party going into the next election?
I think that the global situation has not been kind to incumbent governments all over the world, and our situation will be no different. But at the same time, I believe that we have enough time. We have 18 months. I leave office in January 25, which is literally 18 months, 19 months from now, to be able, with a very disciplined approach to the implementation of the IMF program, the repositioning of our economy, to be able to bring some growth back into the economy, some relief back to our population, to be able to convince them that yes, it's worth them continuing the journey with my party and the new leader of our party, who we'll choose in November this year.
Now, until the IMF bailout last week, Ghana had been locked out of the international market, but the policy credibility provided by the fund means a reopening of the market to Ghana. But despite the risk of further piling of debt, President Akufo-Addo says Ghana will go to the market to borrow when the fundamentals are set right.
Repositioning the Ghanaian economy, firstly, to regain the macro stability that had been lost. Secondly, to be able to have a better control over important data like interest rates, inflation. And then finally also to position us to be able to go back into the international capital market, which had been a source of funding for us for the first 3 or 4 years of our government.
Do you see that happening soon? Because I know your finance minister said there's no rush to get back.
There's no rush to get back, but nevertheless, obviously, why not? Can we not take advantage of global savings? It makes a lot of sense to be able to do that. And the sooner we can do it, better. I think that what the finance minister means is that we're going to try as much as possible to maintain the discipline which is required, which is the most important prerequisite of a successful program.
Right.
And that would mean ramping up our own domestic savings, being able to put systematic controls over public expenditure to make sure that we're always cutting our coat according to our cloth, and giving the impetus to private sector development, private sector investment. We're looking at that more than we're looking for assistance from the multilateral development banks, etc. But basically, these are the objectives that we are. At the end of it, of course, hopefully, position the economy of Ghana in such a way that we have a more diversified economy, we have a stronger economy that can withstand the exogenous shocks that we have witnessed in the last 2 or 3 years, and be able, therefore, to stand on our own feet.
So that's the president speaking at the Qatar Economic Forum. They're assuring that the fundamentals of the economy, which before the IMF program was quite in tatters, will be set right. And when those have been achieved, it will then open the way again for Ghana to have access to the international market. And when that happens, Ghana will definitely go there and borrow. So the trust is that when all the fundamentals of the economy are set right, they will definitely go back to the international market to borrow. Joining us now via Zoom is the Dean of the School of Business, University of Cape Coast, Professor John Gachi, who believes the president should avoid talking about accessing international market now and focus more on getting the fundamentals of the Ghanaian economy to sustainable levels. Prof, I'm grateful that you joined us here. What do you think the president intended to say when he said, quote, "There is no rush to get back, but nevertheless, why can we not take advantage of global savings and make some, if it makes a lot of sense to do that?" What do you think the president wanted to communicate here?
Hello?
Hi, Prof. We can hear you. I don't know if you got my question.
Yeah. Yes, I got a question. I think what the president wants to say is to portray to the international community that what is at stake is not a serious.
Well, so we're still here with
serious matter that they will soon return.
Prof, your line tripped a bit, so we couldn't get the beginning of what you are saying, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now, sir. Professor John Gachi is the Dean of the School of Business of the University of Cape Coast. Now, he has been saying that he believes the president must focus more on getting the fundamentals of the economy set right and not necessarily be talking about accessing the international market. He's been trying to explain what the president really meant when he said that the president has been speaking at the Qatar International Economic Forum, where he's been talking about the program we have with the IMF and trying to get the fundamentals right in terms of ensuring that the fiscal deficit has been brought into sustainable levels. According to him, the financial fiscal law, mandates the government to ensure that the fiscal deficit is within the range of 5% of GDP, and that's what they want to work at. But once they do that and the economy has been brought onto sustainable levels, that will open doors for them to access the international market. A lot of people have been sharing their thought on this, and the caution is that government must tread cautiously here and ensure that they don't pile up on the already burdening public debt that we do have on our hands. So when the president says they want to ensure that there is no rush to get back, but nevertheless, why can we not take advantage of global savings and make some? It makes a lot of sense to do that. What actually does he mean here, and what must government do to ensure that the economy, the fundamentals are brought on sustainable levels. We'll be having a chat here also coming up in this bulletin. We will be talking about the fact that cultivation of marijuana, which remains an offense in Ghana, as the Supreme Court has, in a majority of 5-4 decision, affirmed its judgment earlier. But still on the economy of Ghana, Professor John Gachi has been talking about why it is better for us to look at getting the fundamentals of the economy on sustainable levels before. You know that once this IMF deal has come up, there are certain conditions that the government needs to achieve within the 3-year period that this will be done. One of them is that the government has to strengthen the central bank's independence and thus the monetary policy credibility. The Bank of Ghana Act of 2002, as amended, will be revised now with a view to reduce the overdraft limit, enhance compliance, refine the emergency conditions under which the limit can be temporarily breached, and the extent of the permissible breach under each emergency category. We have more on this here on the Joy News Prime. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back from the break. Now, the cultivation of marijuana remains an offense in Ghana, as the Supreme Court has, in a majority 5-4 decision, affirmed its judgment, which questioned Parliament's decision to allow production for industrial and medicinal purposes. Portions of the Narcotics Control Commission Act allowed the Minister for Interior to grant licenses for cultivation of weed. A private citizen, Izwami Manan, took the matter to the Apex Court, insisting Parliament was not transparent in passing such a crucial law. The court in July 2022 upheld this view and struck out that portion of the law. The Attorney General filed processes asking that the court set aside its own decision. Well, this request was not granted. Legal Affairs correspondent Joseph Akable joins us with more. Joseph, we understand the AG pointed out that the court is interfering with Parliament's authority to pass laws. Tell us more.
As far as Attorney General Godfred Yeboah-Dame is concerned, the laws of Ghana, the constitution for that matter, is quite clear that it is Parliament that has the mandate to pass laws. And so if Parliament is seized with a bill and makes changes to those bills, it cannot be said that anytime they want to make changes to a particular bill, they would have to start the process again and provide a memorandum to explain why they are making those changes. He believes that if that decision, which has now been affirmed, was allowed to stand, it will mean that there will be more or less a fetter on the powers of Parliament, and Parliament will be curtailed in their ability to meet its obligation as enshrined in the 1992 Constitution to make laws. Brace.
Okay. Now, this particular view was challenged by a private citizen. What does his lawyers say on this?
The lawyers for Izwami Manan, led by Fiba Emihie, took the view that what the AG was saying was not accurate. They insisted that the law was quite clear that when a bill is being introduced, it must come with a memorandum that explains in detail what that bill seeks to do. They contend that sometime around 550, when Parliament was considering the Narcotic Control Commission bill, the suggestion was made for an amendment to allow the cultivation of marijuana for industrial and medicinal purposes. Now, the lawyer argues that that was a significant shift from the policy position that ought to have been stated in the original bill that was sent to Parliament. And so it could not have been sneaked in a manner that it was sneaked in. And so on that basis, she took the view and insisted that the Supreme Court was right in enforcing the Constitution, since the Constitution had been breached. And the whole idea of that constitutional provision is to put Ghanaians at large on notice on important legislations to enable them make inputs where necessary. And so that was the view that she urged on the court, which the court upheld.
We know it was a 5-4 decision. Run us through which judges formed the majority and which ones were part of the minority here.
So in terms of the majority 5, Justices Jones Doche, Professor Ashikote, Mariam Owusu, Professor Henrietta Mensah-Bonsu, and Emmanuel Yoni Kulendi, who originally authored the ordinary bench decision. In terms of those who formed the minority, Justices Lovelace Johnson, Amadou Tanko, Samuel Esiedu, George Kumsin, they formed the minority view. And as you can see, so the initial one was 437 judges, 2 new judges being Justices Lovelace Johnson and Mariam Owusu joining this panel to make the 9. 2 other judges on the original panel also retired, and so they had to be replaced by the 2 new judges, Samuel Esiedu and George Kingsley Kumsin. And so 4 new judges joined, but the makeup still, the difference in terms of the original and the review did not change significantly. And the Supreme Court says that its review jurisdiction is of a limited nature and the threshold had not been met, for which reason they decided to affirm its decision. So as it stands now, the section 43 that was struck out by the Supreme Court remains struck out. And so you cannot cultivate cannabis either for industrial or medicinal purposes. Brace.
Did the court draw the distinction between industrial hemp or marijuana? Are they the same thing anyway?
I mean, the court did not have any reason to venture into any aspect of that particular issue. In fact, the section 43 that was struck out, let me just read that specific section 43. It says it's titled Special Provision Relating to Cannabis. 1, it says, despite section 39 to 42, the minister on the recommendation of the commission may grant a license for the cultivation of cannabis which has not more than 0.3% THC content on a dry weight basis for industrial purpose, for obtaining fiber or seed, or for medicinal purposes. 2, for the avoidance of doubt, a license granted under subsection 1 shall not be for the cultivation of cannabis for recreational use.
Okay.
And so the court, this was the provision that the Supreme Court struck out completely, saying that this provision is no longer in force as a law.
Any idea what happens next?
We understand the Attorney General's office holds the view that they disagree with this particular decision, so they are considering the option of starting the whole process again by setting in motion a law, having a bill go to Parliament to allow for the cultivation in the manner that Section 43 had contemplated. But this is early days, yes, but our sources have confirmed at a very high level to us that it is something that the AG is considering and is taking seriously. And it is in the spirit of that belief. That's why they even filed this particular review. And if that did not succeed, then this is the next line of action that they intend to undertake.
All right, Joseph Akabile, grateful to you. Now, Nana Agyemang is president of the Hemp Association of Ghana, and he joins me in the studio. On Zoom is Nana Obuade Boateng Bonsu, who is president of Concerned Farmers Association. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. Nana Agyemang, your first reaction to this development where the Supreme Court has, affirmed the decision to strike out that law on marijuana cultivation in this country?
Well, you see, I have to go back to what you're saying, and a hemp evening to all your viewers. It's nothing to do with marijuana. You are saying it's marijuana. It's not. Even Evans Akabile read the section. It's talking about industrial hemp. Cannabis, industrial hemp, and there's a huge difference. And unfortunately today, all the news that has come out on your portal and everyone else's portal, unfortunately is fake. Because we're talking about industrial hemp that has a THC value of 0.3. It's not what you smoke, it's for industry. It can build a studio. It can produce wood. It can make everything plastic. It can make textile for clothing.
So for the, ordinary person, what's the difference between the cannabis and marijuana? So that's when I see, I can tell the difference between the two.
If you see the two plants together, which is highly unlikely because one cross-pollinates the other, the industrial hemp plant is 16 feet tall and it's very slim. It has a thick stalk. The marijuana plant, which locally we call weed, will grow about 6 feet tall and it's very wide. And it has buds. Now these buds, when you take these buds off and you dry them, that is the weed that we are talking about. But on the industrial hemp side, it doesn't produce those buds. It produces seeds. That's what it produces. And the industrial hemp, as I was saying, is used to make so many different things. One example I gave earlier on in terms of medicinal is that you can take the oil from the industrial hemp and you can give the oil on a particular basis to our children, for example, who suffer from epilepsy. Okay. And it will cure them from having those seizures. It also has inflammatory compounds within it. So if you have inflammation of any parts of the body and you take it, it will reduce the inflammation. It deals with chronic pain as well. So it's also very good for that. So industrially, it's a new industry that we would be creating that would provide thousands of jobs and create thousands of entrepreneurs. And on the other side, medicinally, there are ailments that young and old people are suffering from alike, that this CBD, which is called cannabidiol, would also deal with. So, I mean, I pray your indulgence that you've still got it up on your website and the others too, and it's making the general public confused about what we're talking about. We're not talking about marijuana, we're not talking about we are talking about industrial hemp, which is something completely different. It's a new industry that could bring billions of US dollars into our country. That's what it can do.
So the industrial hemp is the cannabis that we're talking about?
Well, cannabis is the name overall you can use.
Okay.
But there's different strains.
Okay.
And this one is hemp.
Okay, so on that basis, what then do you make of the ruling today?
Well, basically the Supreme Court has slapped the parliamentarians across the knuckles because they believe that, and the plaintiff, this was the plaintiff's case, that because the amendment significantly altered the Narcotics Control Commission Act, then it should have been gazetted so that the wider public would have an idea that, okay, this Narcotics Control Commission Act is in Parliament, but there has been an amendment that now gives authority to the minister to issue licenses, having been recommended by the Narcotics Control Commission. At the time, because I was there, at the time, the parliamentarians didn't believe that they had to gazette it, and I didn't take anything of it because both sides of the House are in agreement with this law. Both sides came together and said they fully agreed with the law. When the amendment was provided, both sides of the House also said they agreed with the amendments, and on that basis, they didn't feel there was a need for it to be gazetted because there was no opposition whatsoever. So basically, the Supreme has wrapped the parliamentarians across the knuckles and basically told them, you don't know what you're doing. And if you want Section 44 to be added into the law, because remember, the law is now there. It was passed 20th of March 2020. The President assented to it 11th of May 2020. So they're saying if you want Section 43 to be reintroduced there, then you must go and do the right things.
Anyway, now that we understand the Concerned Farmers Association some months ago appealed to the government to take a second look at the industrial cultivation of marijuana in the country. President of the association, Nana Obwade Boateng Bonsu, says the industrial cultivation of the plant has the potential to be Ghana's economic game changer. Grateful, Nana, for joining us. Now, why are you of the opinion that cultivation of this industrial hemp is one of the low-hanging fruit to help change the economic fortunes of the country?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers. You did not, the title is Farmer General Nana Obwade Boateng Bonsu. Looking at the industrial hemp and then the benefit that is in it, it is quite huge, which is going to help we, the farmers in this country. Because at the end of the day, we know some other countries like Canada, and even now, Germany, they are about even to legalize it. And this is for industrial purposes, not what others have been talking about. Like maybe when they legalize it, people are going to smoke it another day. This is unsmokable. You can't smoke this. This is for industrial purposes. So I think legalizing this industrial hemp is going to bring a lot of, Nanaji might talk about thousands of entrepreneurs, but I'm talking about millions of entrepreneurs. We are just going to make more money. And at the end of the day, our country will not go to IMF again if we're into it. Because looking at the kind of money that this industrial hemp is going to produce, or we are going to get, it is going to help build the whole country again. So I think the Supreme Court need education. They need to educate Supreme Court about the industrial hemp. Maybe the Supreme Court think about, they have it in mind of the smoking aspect, that is the weed. And this is not weed that we are talking about.
Okay.
This is industrial hemp, which is going to help us to make more money, because the farmers in this country are planting a lot of things that they are not making money.
Okay.
So this thing is going to bring us more money. So I think.
But do we have some farmers in Ghana who are already cultivating that in this country?
I have no idea about it because it is illegal. It is illegal. So,
from the court's decision, it tells that your advocacy that you started some month ago has not worked. All right. So Nanajiman, from Wanana to Nanajiman, you heard him there. The Supreme. So if I understand you well, it means that the Supreme Court would have to take a second look at it, isn't it? What do you think should happen now?
Well, they wouldn't have to take a second look at it. They've given a clear direction. If we want it to be re-included or reintroduced, go and do the right thing.
Okay.
You're significantly going to change the Narcotics Control Commission law that is there already, act that is there already. And in order to do that, they believe, the Supreme Court, that it must be gazetted. Put your things together, bring it to Parliament and gazette it. And let's start the national debate if that's what it's going to take. Let's have that debate before it can be reinserted into the law. But I think it's very interesting what Nana is saying, because I think we've got to recognize that, look, with industrial hemp, this $3 billion that we're talking about, which is even going to be spread over 3 years, is something that Ghana can make within a year.
Okay, $3 billion.
Very easily, very, very easily. And, you know, Nana says, no, it's not thousands of entrepreneurs, it's millions of entrepreneurs. It's a significant number of entrepreneurs, and certainly a significant number of people who are now going to be employed. Government can't employ anyone, but the cultivation, the processing, the manufacturing, the storage, the distribution of industrial hemp can employ thousands of people at one go. Do you understand?
So it means that we are not at a dead end. Parliament can still get.
No, we're not at a dead end. I've seen this type of thing before. It doesn't put me off at all. I'm not fatigued by it at all. This is Ghana, and to be quite honest with you, we're very slow. By the time we have an uptake on this, so many other African countries would have already begun, and they'll be producing so many things that will have a lean part of the market to get involved in. What we need to do is speed up the process, do it properly this time, so that we have a bigger slice of the cake in terms of the market. Because, look, our economy is depressed. It's embattled, it's bruised, it's on its knees. We were talking about, what were we talking about? Ghana beyond aid. And now it's Ghana begging for aid. When we have industrial hemp, you know, the president was totally right when he said, we're sitting on top of money, but we're hungry. It's an indictment on the government. It's an indictment on the president. Because why should we be sitting on top of money and yet we are very, very hungry? Why? Why should that be the case? When we have industrial hemp here, we have the opportunity to establish a brand new industry that cuts right across. It has 25,000 different uses, and they all generate revenue inside our country. What is the problem? Okay. Why are we fixated on this weed and this marijuana thing when it has nothing to do with industrial hemp at all? Why?
All right, Nana, I will come back to you, but Nana Obade is joining us again. Nana, I was asking you that from the court's decision, it means that your advocacy over the month has not worked. What's the next action then for you?
Well, I think it's a disappointment. I mean, I am so surprised that Supreme Court just makes such a pronouncement or just a judgment on that, because looking at the number of young people on the street, the robbery, and even now we have the terrorists in our country, they can easily be influenced with a little money. And we have this industrial hemp that when we cultivate it or when we plant it, we are going to make billions of dollars. Why don't you pass it down? Honorable Etubondi, when he was in Parliament, he advocated for this for a long time. By the end of the day, Parliament put wax in their ears. I'm saying that this is the right path for we to go. This is the way. If Supreme Court is not going to pass this, is Supreme Court ready to pass the gayism and the lesbianism? Are they going to do that? This is the best way for Ghana to go.
Well, so now, what will you do next, now that the court has taken this path?
Well, we will still advocate and we will still put pressure on government, because millions of young people are on the street without jobs. Mobile phone is being snatched, killing each and every day. You can even imagine recently there was young people killing others, their fellow young man, just to go for sakara or just for ritual money, which is alarming. And now the youth now are lazy all because what they are cultivating, they are not making more money. So now they are now entering into betting system. My bet, Aviator and the rest. But when this weed or when this industrial hemp is being legalized, I think a lot of young people can get into it, get a job to do. We can make our shoes here, we can make our dresses, medicinal purposes. We have a lot of people on the street that they are begging to earn all because of.
All right, so that's Nana Obuadi there. Nana, so what will be the next line of action that you will take?
Well, I think for Empire Greek Ghana and the Empire Association of Ghana, we must review the decision. Unfortunately, the written review will not come out yet, but it doesn't stop us from meeting with other stakeholders and looking at the options that we have still available. It's not over by a long shot because the law is already there. As far as I'm concerned, need to reintroduce Section 43, and we need to do it in a way in which we can show that we're not talking about we're not talking about marijuana, and we can provide the concrete examples of what industrial hemp can actually do, so that the parliamentarians will be clear, the Supreme Court will be clear, the media will be clear, and the general populace of Ghana will also be clear that what we are promoting at this stage is industrial hemp, something that will give people employment, something that will give people hope for the future, because at the moment we don't have hope for the future because we are trying to borrow our way out of the financial quagmire that we find ourselves in. In fact, what industry do we have here in Ghana? We are a consuming nation. We are a nation of consumers, and we need to change that. And we have the opportunity to change that with industrial hemp. What is it we are waiting for? I just don't know.
Okay, Nana, I'm grateful to you for joining us. Yeah. Now, to other stories. Out of 257 pupils population at the Kpandu Primary School at the Northeast Gonja district of the Savannah region, only 33 come to school regularly. Hunger has driven them out of school. Their parents say unpredictable rainfall pattern has affected their farming business, so they are unable to provide 3 square meals to their children. In today's edition of Ghana Schools of Shame, my colleague Jojo Kobina looks at how school feeding impacts class attendance.
From afar, everything looks good at Kpandu Primary School in the Northeast Gonja district of the Savannah region.
All right, you are welcome to Kpandu KG Primary Basic School. Here is KG2. My name is Madam Rita Enima. I'm the facilitator for KG2 here. After the Easter holidays, when we came back from the house, Children have not been coming to school. Tuesday, only one child who came. Today, to only one person who is in. Due to poor parental assistance in the community, most of the children come to school without eating. When you ask the parents, they will complain they don't have money to cater for their awards. So now, actually, I'm having the total number of 11 students in the class.
They don't feed them. So always, when they are in school, for some short period of time, they will say, oh, we are hungry, we want to go home, because there is no feeding in the school.
Parents here disagree that they are unwilling to support their children. They argued that they built the school, provided furniture, and even paid teachers before the government intervened. The school management committee chairman said their farming business has failed because of unpredictable rainfall, so they are unable to feed their families.
Last time, my son needed a coin, but I shouted at him because I had no money. I was annoyed. I yelled. It spoilt my day. How come I could not give my child just a coin? It broke my heart. Some men are even committing suicide. But I won't do that. We don't have money. Times are really hard. We, the parents of Kpandu, built the school. At the time we built the school, we farmed and everything was good.
The few children here say they're also hungry and wish they stayed at home.
Well, let's have a reaction on this particular story by speaking to Wedad Saibu, who is joining us on this. Wedad, grateful for joining us here. I mean, this is a very heartbreaking story. How can we really go about it, you know, in trying to solve this challenge to get more children to go to school?
Good evening to your cherished viewers. I'm very honored to be part of this discussion. Just to state that what we have witnessed in this video is not just an isolated case up here. There are several such cases in most of the communities that we work in. And it is really saddening to see that a country that actually, as it were, have a school feeding program as one of the poor intervention program is actually having children dropping out of school or playing truancy because of lack of feeding. And for us, it is important that, I mean, this actually highlights the importance of the school feeding program and the fact that most communities that are in need of it are not really fully covered. So for me, I think that, yes, government with all its good intentions have earmarked the program, I mean the school feeding program, as part of the 2018-2030 strategic sector plan. And we appreciate that. We appreciate all the good work that the government is doing. But as you can see, there's a lot to be done in this regard because a lot of communities that really deserve this program are not covered. Even for some, or for those that are covered, it is still also bedeviled with some teething challenges. In some areas, the provision is not frequent due to so many reasons, either the shortages of food supplies or the kitchen facilities are not really put up to support these interventions. And it actually forced a lot of parents, I mean, because the intervention with all its good intention is meant to support children from poor households. So it means that for children who really need it, it actually means that they are coming from places where their parents cannot afford the hot square meal for them. So that is why for most of these children in these communities, they will actually drop out from school or will not even have the zeal to go to school because they feel that when they go at a point in time in the course of the learning period, they would, when they feel hungry, they will not be able to get food.
So are you calling for a better targeting of beneficiaries? Or what is it that you think will make this more efficient and beneficial to these people?
Yeah, that is one of it. Better targeting communities that really deserve it, because the way it is implemented right now, as I've indicated earlier, most of the communities that really deserve it do not have it. So it is about the government really identifying and doing that proper targeting, reaching out to communities and widening the coverage, because I know for a fact that most of the communities that are currently covered also equally deserve it. So it means that the coverage is not sufficient enough.
There's still more to be done. But wait, does the solution only lie in the hands of government?
Not necessarily. As you can see, even, in some other communities.
All right, so we are still having a chat on the school feeding program and how in some schools that are even beneficiaries, they still are not able to get enough supplies, leading to some children staying out of school. You heard a story of Kpandu, where out of the many children, only a few are able to go to school because parents say the irregular rainfall pattern has affected their farming businesses, and therefore they are not able to support these children to always be in school. Wade, who is with an NGO working in the northern part of Ghana, suggests that government has to widen the beneficiary schools. So yes, let's wrap up here. I was asking you whether the solution only lies in the hands of government. Wait, I'm trying to find out from you whether government is the only one that has the solution. Is it government only? Okay. All right. So this is still Joy News Prime.